Hey, what's up, guys? Mike here, coming to you from down in the dungeon, and it's time for the Sunday special. That this Sunday is going to be extra special because I'm going to tell you about how I got here from where I've been. And I'm going to try to make it brief or as quick as possible. So, we got little ones upstairs, but I grew up in a fundamentalist Christian family, and my dad is a fundamentalist Christian preacher still to this day, and had been my whole life. And when I say fundamentalist, we wouldn't have called ourselves that really, because there are some people that just call themselves fundamentalists. But how I want to define fundamentalist is basically anybody in the Christian faith who believes that the Bible is inerrant and perfect, etc. Okay, so if you believe that way, whether or not you practice that, whether you believe that way, I believe you to be a fundamentalist because it's right. You believe that this book is literally inerrant and it came directly from God. Okay, that's how I define it. So that's what we believe, fully believe that, and we were a very conservative, fundamentalist type belief system for my entire life growing up. And it was one of those things though where we were very conservative Christians on Sundays and Wednesdays, but it wasn't really carried over into the rest of the week. Okay, so it wasn't like we were we didn't pray over our meals. We didn't really practice our Christianity throughout the week. Okay, it was just like on Sundays. I grew up in a very toxic environment, and I remember my parents. Now, they had us when they were very young, and so they weren't mature enough to have children. So we'll give them an out on that. But they I remember multiple times they'd be fighting and arguing all the way up to the church. And we get to church, we got to put our face on, right? Our church face on. That happened multiple times. I'd go as far as say it happened 25 to 30% of the time. I'm not kidding. My parents did not get along very well at all when I was younger. And they still don't really I think now they're in the mode of where they tolerate each other. Now, I went to, after that, and I was pretty active in the church as far as I got baptized when I was 13. I was actually a bit of a holdout. My brother, who's younger than me, got baptized first. I think somewhere inside me, inherently, the things that I saw outside of church and the things that were taught in the church weren't really adding up, and I was like, I don't really know. Part of it was that, and part of it was just I was a shy child. I didn't want to get up in front of everybody and do that, but eventually I did. And I even eventually I would lead prayers and things in church, and stuff like that. I never really was the singing or anything. I never wanted to get up in front of people and lead a song, song service or praise and worship, as they call it now, or anything like that. Even still today, I won't really sing in front of people. I don't know. I'm a pretty secure individual, but that's the one thing. I have this bucket list of things that are scary to me, and I've done damn near every one of them except for karaoke. I don't know why, I just cannot make myself do it. I don't know why. But anyway, So if you've watched some of my videos before, some of this might be a little redundant, and I'm sorry about that, but I thought I would compile it all into one and plus add on where I'm at now. So anyway, all through high school and stuff, and of course I was a terrible teenager. I mean, I was raised in a very toxic environment, a very hypocritical environment. So it was nothing for me to go out on a Saturday night and get drunk or high or whatever, and then go to church on Sunday morning, and maybe even participate in the worship service. Like, I was, that's the level of just absolute toxicness that I was totally in and a part of, and an active part of. But because I was obviously contributing to that as well. So then I go to college, and of course I tell everybody when I move off to college, I tell everybody I'm going to church, but I wasn't going to church. I couldn't wait to not go to church, So I told people I was going to church, but I wasn't fucking going to church. What I was doing was I was partying it up and drinking and smoking, the same shit that I was doing, except now I didn't have to wake up early on a Sunday and go to church. Okay. And so I did that for years, and this was really the first time that I was exposed to things outside of my specific religious sect. I was so like I remember I was first exposed to atheism. We had learned about these things in church, but we had learned about them from the point of view of the church people, not from the point of view of the people in the other religions, basically. And I learned about, I had some friends that were Hindus. They were Indians, they were Hindus, so I learned a little bit about that, but I wasn't really interested in religion much. I was interested in partying, in doing drugs, and getting laid. That's what I was interested in. And I did that for a long time, and then ended up sort of in a relationship almost by accident. Of course, when I say by accident, I don't mean like that I wasn't a participant. I'm trying to pass the blame. It just kind of happened that I ended up in a relationship with somebody who was of the same religious sect that I was. And of course, she was doing all of these things that I was doing, drinking and partying and having sex. But she was still waking up and going to church on Sunday morning. So basically I moved away for college. She stayed at home for college. Okay. And so then, I would come back obviously during the summer or periodically, And so we developed a relationship. I ended up just falling into a relationship with her, basically because I wound up fucking homeless, and I basically ended up just living with her. And so we started going to church and this stuff, and then eventually, we actually got married and had a baby. But as I was doing this, right, I got into the church, and I started to get back into the church. The drinking and things kind of waned a little bit, but mainly because I was just hiding it. And if you're doing it out in the open, you can do it limitlessly, basically. But if you're trying to hide it, it automatically becomes less, right? So I was still smoking, getting high and drinking and stuff like that, and having sex with other people, but I was hiding it, so it wasn't as often. And going to church and being an active member in the church, doing prayers, all these things, doing these things, even at one point leading Bible studies and things like this, right? So I'm deep, in a way, I'm almost modeling the way that I grew up, right, and the things that I saw growing up. So I'm not trying to blame anybody. Like I said, I'm an active participant in this, okay, and I know that I'm doing shitty things. And there would even be sometimes when I would be drunk or high where I would have these moments of clarity, or I'd be like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? This is terrible. Anyway, I ended up sort of not being able to handle the fucking fakeness anymore after a while, and so we got divorced, which is very good and bad. It was good because now I didn't have to be fake anymore, but it was bad because we had a child, and I know that she suffered because of that, and it's really heartbreaking, and even now, we have a great relationship, but it's still not as good as I wish that it was, and it's not as good of a relationship as I have with my 2-year-old, who I've been around since she was born. You know, it's but yeah, I'm assuming it'll always be like that, and that's sort of my sin. You know, I fucked up in that way, but I guess I wouldn't change it. You know, but it's still it's like a shadow that's going to follow me around forever. But anyway. So after we got divorced, obviously I quit going to church again. I mean, I was in church, and then I was doing all this shit. So everybody knew, like, you know, and I'm not going to go to church. Plus, I didn't want to go to church anyway. I just didn't want to. I'm not a morning person. I don't want to fucking wake up and go do that shit. Like, I just didn't want to. And anyway, so I fell away again, I guess. I don't know what you want to call it, but basically didn't go to church, but got back to partying and drinking a lot. But this time I didn't have to be fake about it. So I was doing, you know, living, I was supporting myself. I had a real job. I'm supporting myself, and I'm going out and partying and doing whatever the fuck I want because I can, because I'm a fucking adult at this point, right? I'm like late 20s. I can do whatever the fuck I want as long as I'm paying the bills, right? So, and then I'm doing this for a while, for a long while, and I kind of get to where I've constantly been, probably especially since right before the divorce and then ever since then, constantly consuming information. Like, I just love to learn new things. Like, I love that, and I'm constantly consuming information all the time. And at this time, I'm really into like philosophy and Eastern mysticism, Eastern philosophy, this kind of stuff. I end up being like an atheist for about an hour or something. I don't know. It kind of doesn't make sense to me, and then I fall. You know, basically, I would have categorized myself as like an agnostic, and then I meet my current wife now, who is the greatest blessing that a person could have. But she was also like a very conservative Christian, and when I found that out, I was like, oh. But you know, she turned me on to like apologetics, which I had never even heard of before, and I started like just consuming all this apologetic stuff, and it really made at what I thought at the time were really great arguments for God, for the existence of God, why the Bible is correct, and you know, why Jesus is the only way, etc. Right? Hold on one second. All right, I've got a fire going outside, so I just wanted to check on it. Oh, and by the way, it's under control. It's totally fine. Yeah, we started going to church again. We actually started a ministry. We went on a whole mission trip thing to like start our own 501c3, and we actually still have it today. I'm trying to give it away, but anyway, we're doing all that, and I fall back into church, man, and we eventually find a church that we really enjoy going to, and I am probably, man, I'm like hardcore again. I was never really hardcore to begin with, but this time I feel like I'm right this time, right? Like you know, I got rebaptized, like I'm on the straight and narrow, man, and I know the truth. I know the truth. I got it all figured out, right? And I was really hardcore about it, really. And but it wasn't really doing anything for me. And that sounds like selfish, and Christian people are going to be like, oh, well, you know, you're being, you know, oh, it's not doing anything for you. Like, that's not the point of it. I mean, I understand that argument, but what I'm trying to say is, like, in a very practical way, it wasn't doing anything for me because I was still living in hell. All right, I was overcome with suicidal ideation and depressive thoughts, and still smoking weed, still drinking alcohol, you know what I mean, and a lot of anger and these things, and I was really, I know that the truth of God, but my life is a fucking mess, right? And then I got right to the point of I'm gonna end it, and I had a spiritual awakening. No shit, like a fucking miracle. At least that's what I thought at the time, right? And I guess looking back, it still is, really. Because if it hadn't been for that, I wouldn't be where I am now. So, but I had a spiritual awakening, and what happened was, man, I changed. I fucking changed. Everything fucking changed. Okay? It wasn't like it happened overnight, but the initial onset of it, it was instant. Okay? And it really was. And it took a while to work my way into it and kind of figure that out, but it was overnight, like a freaking miracle, seriously. And what happened was that my Christianity softened a lot. So I wasn't so much hardcore. I wasn't seeing sinners everywhere. I was seeing people that needed help. I was seeing people that needed love. And I was actually, for the first time ever, a real, what you would call an actual genuine real Christian, unlike 90% of all of them that claim it. Man, it really changed me. But then, I'm thankful for it, and then, well, I don't really know what started me out of it. I think it was actually my pursuit of Christian knowledge, wanting to know more and more and more. Because the problem that I was having was, if I can be this way, if I can be a genuine, good Christian, why aren't all these other Christians, why do they seem so wrong? You know what I mean? And and at the time, I wasn't even pointing fingers at these people or anything, but I was look, I see these people who profess Christianity, but they've got it wrong. And I started to see it more of a psychological thing, right? We need freedom from ourselves, in a way, okay? Which, look, you can extrapolate from the Bible just about anything. Just about anything. I mean, look how many different denominations there are, okay? And so, and part of me still cling, the Bible is a really good, if you understand it this way, it's a really good book for how you got so fucked up in the head and how you can be free of that. But man, it's it would take a lot of explaining that I don't really want to do in this video, but there is a way to view it that way. The fall, the death and the resurrection, these, and I went down this whole rabbit hole of a lot of this, and one of the first things to go was the inerrancy, right? Which is pretty undisputably easy to prove if you just have a excuse me, if you're open to it at all. That was the first sort of domino to fall, and then it was a cascade of everything sorts to fall after that, and you sort of learn the history, you learn the history, and how the history of man and the history of the Bible don't really match up well, and how the history of the books and the way that you were taught isn't actually true. When these books were written, who wrote them, etc. You start diving into the actual facts of, like, so far I'm just talking about the Old Testament, but you look into the New Testament, you start looking at that, like who actually wrote these books, when were these books actually written, how were they written, what is it that we've really gotten here, what's the difference in the translations, etc., etc. And you start getting to where you're like, oh, this is all made up. They just made all this up. Like, even the person of Jesus, like I believe. When I say believe, oh God, there's a difference between believing and knowing. But when I say believe, it's because I believe it and I don't know it. But I believe that there was a person named Jesus. Is that even Jesus' name? Is it Yeshua or Emmanuel? I don't know. He's got different names in the Bible. But anyway, so I believe there was a person of that who was probably crucified, etc. But the problem is that all of the writings we have about him, the things that he said, are not reliable. They're just factually unreliable. Okay, and that's just, if you just throw out the entire Old Testament, which is mostly just made up. It's pretty much made up. The majority of it, okay, it's just made up. What it amounts to is an origin story for the Israelites, I guess you'll call them. I mean, there's so much controversy around this group of people, but it's sort of their origin story is what the Old Testament is, okay? And a lot of it's just made up, like Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, the flood, Abraham, all this stuff, okay? Exodus, all these things. Most of it's just made up, okay? But we get to the New Testament, and we have New Testament writings about things that probably happened. But when you start to get down to like the actual, like, what did Jesus say? Like those type things, right? So they'll read the letters in red, right? And they think Jesus literally said these things. We don't know that. This is not reliable. It's not reliable. The people that wrote it aren't reliable. We don't even know who wrote a lot of it. We know that some of them are forgeries or what they were writings that are attributed to certain people that weren't actually written by those people. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew, Mark, and Luke were not written by people named Matthew, Mark, and Luke. I'm pretty sure that, right? Luke might be, certainly Matthew and Mark are not the names of the people that wrote those. We don't even know that John, we don't know who wrote John, really. So, they think John, but we don't know that. Like, they're very, 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 very unreliable. And I mean, you start looking even more into it, and you see that there's this, there's the underlying theme of this is a blood sacrifice, a human sacrifice. Okay. Now, the God in the Old Testament. The God in the Old Testament is so inconsistent because at times he condemns human sacrifice, and at times he allows human sacrifice and commands human sacrifice. It's really, really wildly inconsistent. But in the New Testament here, we have a human sacrifice that saves all of humanity. Blood, and so you ask a Christian today, well, what is it that saves you? It's the blood of Christ. The blood. Okay? What do you do during communion? Right? Jesus said it himself. He said that either that you have to eat of my body and drink my blood, or something like that. I mean, that's what he said. I just don't know. I'm paraphrasing. And what do they believe that they're doing during communion? Drinking blood and eating the body of Christ, like a cannibalistic ritual. Okay? But the blood is what we focus on, the blood. Saved by the blood, washed in the blood, blood. There's blood everywhere, blood. And what does that sound like? Well, damn, dude, if it doesn't sound a hell of a lot like paganism, right? Or what the Christians would call paganism, which they don't even know what that means. I'm pretty sure if you look it up, the word pagan actually means like a non-Roman. Anyone outside of the Roman Empire is a pagan. It didn't necessarily have anything to do with religion, but we've co-opted it and we've adapted. So, but what does it say? What you know that the Norse pagans, if you want to call them that, they would sprinkle blood on each other. The people in Britain, I forgot what the Druids, they would do blood sacrifices. I'm pretty sure the Native Americans in this country had some sacrifices like that. Certainly the Aztecs did. It's all around blood. It's very bloody, very bloody, very, very bloody. And Christianity is no different. Okay? It's the blood of Christ. It's blood, right? It's blood. It's very bloody, and it's very pagan. It just is. It just is. It's human sacrifice. Okay, so you could say that I no longer at all prescribe to Christianity in any way. Like, not because like I don't have like a hatred or animosity towards it. It's more like it's just made up. It's just made up. So where am I now? Well, that's pretty much where I'm at, I guess you'd say. Like I'm not a Christian. I don't believe that any of these worldly religions are better than another one. You know, they're all just made up. And our ancestors, believe it or not, I think everybody has this idea that our ancient ancestors were constantly busy, constantly doing stuff or something. You know, like we're constantly hunting, constantly gathering, constantly making weapons or spears, constantly doing this or that. But they actually, when you have a group of people, like a tribe or something, there ends up becoming like a lot of downtime. Like they had it's not like they had the internet, right? They didn't have TV. Like they had a lot of downtime. So what did? They sat around and they told stories, right? Made up stories. Told stories to frighten the kids, whatever. It's campfire, around the campfire. You ever been camping? So they told stories, and eventually a lot of these stories got, the heroes of the stories got transitioned into gods. Or maybe they just straight up made up gods. A God told me this. People do it now, especially in like charismatic churches and things. God gave me a word for your life, or God, I was speaking to God the other day, or whatever, whatever it is. It's just lies. At some point, I think you just mature to a certain place where, where you're just like, man, this is all just horse shit. But it did serve a purpose for me. I have it got me to where I am. I actually have some theory about religion being a rite of passage from adolescence into actual adulthood. You got to learn the rules to the game before you can play the game, kind of a thing. But where I'm at now, it's not like I'm like, I think evolution is extremely interesting. I think it's very, very interesting. I think that a lot of our ancient ancestors, and there's a hell of a lot more evidence for that kind of stuff than there is of anything in the Bible. There's almost no evidence of anything in the Bible, especially the oldest parts of the Bible. But we have a hell of a lot of evidence for our ancient ancestors and our ancient cousins, other Homo genus, Homo erectus and Homo Africanus and Homo, whatever homos. So, and I think it's super cool. It's really, really neat stuff. It's super cool to learn about. But, you know, am I convinced of, you know, life forming in some primordial soup somewhere? I'm not convinced of it. I don't know that I would ever be convinced of it. You know, like, that's the difference between belief and knowing. Like, I'm interested in stuff that I know, stuff that has actual physical evidence. I'm not really all that interested in like theories. Oh, the Big Bang. Okay. I mean, okay, can you prove that? No, you can't prove it. Okay, well then let's start where we are, you know? I think that's one of the mistakes that people make, probably especially younger people. You know, I'm at a place now where, you know, I'm not really interested in how it started. I'd rather like to start where I'm at and then go backwards. So I don't want to start at the beginning because I don't know what the fuck happened in the beginning. But I can start where I am now, and I can go back about 2 million years. And I can say, hey, you know, we're pretty sure that the first ape stood upright about, you know, 2.5 million years ago, something like that. I can say, hey, that's pretty, you know, we're almost certain on that. But I can't go and say, oh, the Big Bang happened, and then all of this happened, and then all of this happened. No, I'd rather start, like I said, here, now, right? Because what we can prove, and the truth about things is most clearly now, right? And then the farther and farther and farther back you go, you know, it gets cloudier and cloudier. It's sort of like just like your vision, right? Like I can see this, my hand right here, you know, a foot from my face. I can see my hand a lot clearer than if my foot was 200 yards away, right? And so it's sort of the same thing. Like I can still see it, right? I still know that it's there, but as the details maybe aren't as great, right? So where I'm at now, it's just, you know, all religions are bullshit, made up. It's okay if you believe them if you want to. I don't think that, though, that you should have the right to pass laws in the government based on your religious beliefs. I don't think that you have the right to tell other people what they should believe. I don't think you have the right to put other people down or you know, make them feel less than or anything like that for what you believe that you cannot prove, things that you believe that are fictions. You know, if that's what you want to believe, it makes your life better, then that's fine. It did enhance my life at one point, but I grew out of it. I grew beyond it, basically, because the more I learned about it, the more I realized that it was just made up. Oh. I meant to end the video right there. I got this little clicker thing. It's like a little Bluetooth off button. But anyway, that's your Sunday special. Catch you in the next one.